Good morning, Facebook, and welcome to another Bringing to the Zoo to You here at Brookfield Zoo. My name is Katie, and I'm an animal care specialist, and with me we have two other animal care specialists, Jill and Craig, and before we start, we just want to say thank you guys for tuning in, for donating it, and for supporting us through all of this. Now we want to introduce you to two of our newest members of our ambassador team, and these are both white-throated monitors. Now you might be asking where that white throat is. These guys are actually juveniles, so it's not quite in yet, but as they grow, that white throat will become more prominent. So these guys are lizards. They're part of the reptile family, so they have a lot of those characteristics. They have scales, which help keep them dry and protect them. They also have they're ectothermic or cold-blooded, so their body temperature changes with the temperature around them, and then they also are oviparous, which means that they lay eggs. So these guys are found in southern Africa, and they're actually the second largest monitor species there. Now these guys don't look that big, but again, they are juveniles. They're about 8 months old, so at full grown, they can be about 6 feet long and about 25 pounds. Now ours are only about 2 or 3 feet long and only about 4 pounds, so they have quite a bit of growing to do. So hopefully once we can see all of you again, you guys can come watch them and see them grow with us. So living in southern Africa, they live in habitats like grasslands and scrublands, so there's a lot of open areas. There's also some rocky and a little bit of wooded areas. And so to live in that environment, they've got some really cool adaptations. So if you look close at their body, they've got a lot of browns and whites and grays on them, and so that helps to camouflage them against the dirt and the rocks and the trees where they live. As they get older, those colors will become a little bit darker, the banding will become more prominent, and again, that white throat will become more prominent. Now they also have some really super sharp claws that helps them when they climb trees, so they can dig into that bark and pull themselves up. And then they also have this really super long, thick tail. And that is really important. It helps them do a couple different things. So they can use it as a rudder when they swim, so to help steer them. It's prehensile, so again, when they're climbing trees, they can wrap it around branches to help stabilize them and stop them from falling. And then they can also use it as a weapon. So if they feel threatened, they can actually crack it like a whip against a predator. These guys are carnivorous animals, so they eat meat. In the wild, they would mostly be eating small rodents, small birds, eggs, and insects. Here at the zoo, they get a diet of like worms and hard-boiled eggs, mice, and some ground meat too. Now to be a carnivore, that means you've got to have some really good mechanisms to find and hunt your food. So if you're watching them, you might see that tongue stick out every once in a while. They're using that tongue like you use your nose to smell. And so, of course, he's not going to do it now, but he does use it to smell. So they have a special organ at the back of their throat called the Jacobson's organ, and that allows them to take in the various odors and chemicals and kind of almost taste the air around them. And these guys have a forked tongue, just like a snake does, and so that helps them to even make that smelling more accurate. So it helps them to kind of smell in more directions, wider directions, and give them a really big view of smell. So now once they find their prey item, they have to hunt it, and these guys practice open pursuit predation. That's a little bit different than an ambush predator, where an ambush predator would be hiding and sneaking up and surprising their prey. These guys will actually just full out run after them, and so the idea is that they can outrun them and chase them down and eat them that way. And so they also are able to eat their prey whole, so they can dislocate a bone called a hyoid bone at the back of their throat that allows them to swallow eggs and things like that whole. These guys are really, really effective predators. And they don't have a lot of predators themselves. They aren't really predated upon, but sometimes they'll be gone after by a bird of prey, and so they can defend themselves if they need to. So like I said, they have those really sharp claws that they can use. Their first defense mainly is to usually run away, and they'll kind of run up a tree where a predator can't chase after them. But if they do feel the need to use their defenses, they'll actually puff their body up. They'll take a big breath of air, blow it up like a beach ball. That makes them look a lot bigger than what they really are. So the predator might be like, oh boy, I don't want to go after that, you're really big. And if that doesn't work, like I said, they can use that tail like a whip. And while it won't do a lot of damage, it definitely will surprise and stun a predator long enough for them to run away. So I did say these guys are new to our ambassador team, and so with that, we do a lot of training with them to get them ready to see you guys. And you might be like, training? This is a lizard. What are you going to train a lizard to do? These monitors are actually extremely intelligent, so they actually can form bonds with people. They recognize faces. Now, they aren't going to run up to you like a dog would wagging their tail, but they can recognize that you're a positive source. They'll come up to us. They'll let us hold them. And so the training that we do involves a lot of target training, which you've probably seen in some of our other Facebook Lives, where we ask them to touch their nose or their tongue to a target or a piece of plastic on a stick. And that allows us to build a lot of other behaviors, such as following us, crating, and we're working on a really big behavior right now, which is putting a harness on and walking them. So again, once we can see you guys, maybe you can come on a walk with us in our monitors. So right now, we're doing a lot of training in handling. So this right now is actually a training session right here, which is just getting used to being held for long periods of time. And so you'll see some fidgeting, us adjusting, and that's just us working with them to figure out what makes them most comfortable. So if you see some adjusting or fidgeting, that's totally okay. And as always, our animals have the option to say no. So if at any point in time they decide that they want to be done, we say okay, and then we go back. All right, well, at this point in time, I hope you guys really think that these guys are awesome animals and that you have tons of questions about them. So do you have any questions for us and our two boys right now?
Yes. How long do they live?
They can live about 10 to 15 years in the wild, but under professional care, they can live into their 20s or so.
How long is their tongue?
How long is their tongue? It's pretty long. Like I said, they do use it for smelling. So offhand, I'd say it's probably 5 or 6 inches.
What are their names?
So that is a great question. Now I said that they are new to our team, which means that they currently don't have names right now. So we're working on that, but right now we kind of affectionately call this darker one Big Guy, as he's a little bit bigger, and this lighter color one Little Guy, as he's a little bit smaller.
Where can you find them here at Brookfield Zoo?
So here at Brookfield Zoo, they actually are not on exhibit right now. They're some part of our ambassador program, so when we open back up, you'll see them at chats and events and things like that when they come out for special appearances. And in that way, seeing you guys and being out in that open space becomes their exhibit.
Can you remind us what species this is?
Yes, this is a white-throated monitor, and they are the second largest species of monitor in Africa.
Can they swim well?
They can swim well, yeah. So they've got these really thick muscular bodies that allow them to swim, and then they have that really long tail that they'll use as a rudder to help steer them.
Do you have to trim their claws?
That's a great question. Yeah, we do. So in the wild, they would naturally wear their claws down on rocks and things like that. And while they have those here at the zoo, we do trim them down just because we do handle them a lot and they're very sharp. So we do trim them about every 2 weeks or so.
How much do they weigh?
Right now, since they are juveniles, they're pretty small. They're about 4 pounds. And at full grown, they can weigh up to about 25 pounds. So they've got quite a bit of growing to do.
How many eggs do they lay at once?
Ooh, that's a great question. So they can, the females will breed about twice a year, and in a single clutch, a female can lay about 50 eggs. It's a lot.
What do they eat?
They are carnivores, so they'll eat lots of different meat. In the wild, they would eat small rodents, small birds, eggs, insects, and then here at the zoo, they get mice, ground meat, hard-boiled eggs, and a lot of different varieties of insects.
Can you remind us how big they will get?
Yeah, so at full grown, they're going to be about 6 feet long and about 25 pounds. They are huge.
What do they feel like?
I always say, so they've got really rough scalage here, and I always say it's kind of similar to a basketball. Hard, rough, it does help protect them since they're in areas with lots of shrubs and rocks and things, so as they're moving their bodies along it, it doesn't scratch them.
And can you remind us how old they are again?
Yep, they are about 8 months old. They're very young still.
What color is their tongue?
Let me look. It's like bluish and pink, yeah.
Oh yeah, there, now we can see
Now
it.
you can see that nice forking that it has.
Ooh, they kind of look like dinosaurs too.
Yeah.
So do they have really good sight?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's like really excellent or really poor, but they've got about average eyesight. They rely more on their sense of smell than their sight.
And where would they live in the wild?
So in the wild, they live in southern and southeastern Africa, in the grasslands and scrublands.
Where would they sleep at night in the wild?
So they are diurnal like us, so they are awake during the day and they sleep at night, and they use those sharp claws to dig dens or burrows. And then if they are lazy and don't want to do that, they also sometimes steal rodents and termite mounds and use them as dens.
How fast can they run?
They can get somewhere about like 10, 15 miles an hour. Not super fast, but enough to outrun a mouse.
Does the one that Craig's holding like to be held like a baby?
Yes. The one that Craig's holding is very active, and he's typically chooses the baby position to be held in. Our other one chooses a more standard lizard holding position. We kind of just roll with it, and whatever they're comfortable with, that's what we go with.
What are their natural predators?
They don't really have a lot. Typically in the areas that monitors are found, they usually are the only large terrestrial carnivore. But if they are preyed upon, it's usually by a bird of prey or a large carnivore that's wandered into their territory, like a lion or that kind of thing.
Do they shed their skin like a snake?
They do shed their skin. I wouldn't say it's necessarily like a snake. Snakes usually shed their skin in one single piece. These guys, it's more of a gradual flaking off to shed their skin. So you'll see bits and pieces here and there that haven't shed off yet.
When will people be able to see them? I mean, not when the zoo opens, but when the zoo opens.
It kind of depends on where we are in our training. So right now we are working on handling them every single day. So usually we start with kind of a soft opening to guests. So we'll bring them out for maybe 1 or 2 people and see how they do, and gradually increase the crowd size. So it's hard to give an actual time limit. It's just how long they take to feel comfortable. They've been doing really great so far. When we first got them, we had them at a couple larger events. They did really well. They will be a pettable animal at that point, so you can see what they feel like.
So if they smell with their tongues, do they also have noses?
They do have noses, but they use them to breathe, so it's purely for respiration.
Okay. Are they related to snakes?
They, vaguely, yes. They are reptiles, so they do share the ectothermic or cold-bloodedness. They have scales. They are oviparous. They lay eggs. But otherwise, they're in different orders. So these guys are in an order called Squamata with other lizards.
How can you tell these two apart?
So the easiest way that I go, one is bigger and one is smaller, but that's hard if they're not right next to each other. So I usually look at their tails and their faces. So little guy here has a little bit lighter of a face and a lot of yellowing around his nose. And then on his tail, his bands are a little bit lighter and less defined. Whereas you look at big guy, he's darker, his face doesn't have as much of that yellow, and his bands on his tail are much more dark and pronounced.
So what other types of training do you do with them?
Right now we're just working on targeting, asking them to come follow us. We're working on putting a harness on, taking them out for walks, and we're also working on them demonstrating what's called a tripod behavior, which is actually when they stand up on their tail and their back hind legs. They're doing pretty well with all of that.
Do they spend a lot of time in trees?
They don't spend a lot of time in trees, so they're primarily terrestrial. If they do go up into a tree, it's usually to run away from a predator or to breed or mate up there.
What's your favorite fact about
That's
monitors?
My favorite fact. So there was a study done at one point that suggested that these guys might be able to count. Not in the sense that if I asked them to count to 3, they would start, 1, 2, 3. But they can kind of understand quantities where they were given a specific amount of food, and on days where they were giving more or less, they didn't eat. So that's kind of cool that they're that intelligent. I also like that they form bonds with people. That's pretty unique in monitors and tegus. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank you guys again for joining us here for our Bringing the Zoo to You at Brookfield Zoo. And if you guys would like to continue to support us by watching these, donating to us, all of that is incredibly appreciated. And with that, we hope that we can see you guys soon. Thanks. Bye.